but everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing its...
The Tapper Market. Starting to rise.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the horn of Africa.
All right, good morning, folks. Once again, welcome this morning. This is Frank. I am your host. This is the Revolutionary Reparation Educational Lecture Series every Friday morning. So, welcome you all this morning. So, as you come on, please share the live and also please like. So, just for your information, right? The reason why we want you to share and the reason why we are asking you to subscribe, so that just in case when we go live, you will be able to get a notification of we being live. Because some of the time, some of the discussion that we're going to have here after we are done is going to be deleted. Of course, you know, we do not control YouTube, okay? We do not control Facebook, so we do not control the social media. So of course, you know who control it. So there will be some issue that will be discussed here. It's never going to be in their favor. So they're going to make sure they delete it. So that's why we want you to share, and that's why we are asking you to subscribe, so that once we go live, you can be able to watch the live and also take note, because like I said, some topic right after the discussion, they're going to delete it. So we have had instances where YouTube sent a notification that the video that we did is against their guideline. And of course, things that we're going to discuss is going to be against the white supremacy guideline. It's never going to be in our favor, as long as it is a topic to unite African people, as long as it is a topic to open the eyes of African people. It's not going to be in our favor, so they're going to delete it. So we are just asking you to, always subscribe, not just liking, because sometimes you may like, and once we go live, you may not get a notification and you'll miss some topic. So that is what we are trying to say, that subscribe so that you can catch us live, because sometime after we are done, they're going to delete it and we have no choice but to just get along. So welcome this morning. So today's topic, ayaka. All right. Today's topic says Dr. Phill. All right. He is a guy known on Facebook. No, okay. He is a guy known in America here, right? He has his platform. He carries himself around as a therapist, all right, who gave advices to people in the United States here, all right? So his view on reparation. So we're going to look at it. So he says giving reparation to Black America, all right, is a disaster. Giving reparation to Black America is a disaster, okay? And he says, if Black America receive reparation, they are not going to use it for anything good, all right? So that's what makes it a disaster. They are going to lavish it. They are going to buy weed and smoke weed. They are going to buy drugs, okay, and drugs themselves. They are going to buy guns and become gangster. It's not going to be good for America, because America are going to be a land of gangster. That is what he's trying to portray. That is what he's trying to say. That is why he said it's going to be a disaster to give reparation to Black people. It's a disaster because Black people are going to buy drugs. Okay? Black people are going to buy guns. Black people are going to be on the streets. That's what makes a disaster, right? So Black people will not do anything good with that money. So there's no need giving reparation to Black people. There's no need discussing about reparation because Black people are of no good. Black people does not know anything about business. They have no business idea. All they know is to suck their pants to their butts. Okay? All they know is to buy drugs, take in cocaine, buy guns, and get on the street. All they know is to buy weed, marijuana, and smoke. So if America do that, okay, America going to be a land of gangsters. That is what he's trying to say. All right, so let me see something here. We're going to get into it, folks, but I see the comment here. I don't understand what the comment is trying to say. So I don't understand. All right, so Tuesday said, at Frank, there is nothing that you will cover that is more radical. First of all, I am not radical. All right, let me make that clear because I am not radical. I am here to bring the truth. I am here to speak the truth. I am an educator. All right, I educate my people of the reality. All right, all I can say is I am a Pan-Africanist because the word radical, you are in a country where you have to be mindful of words, all right? Because they can use just one word, all right, to frame you in something negative or bad that it is not of you. I am not radical. We live in a country, like I said, you have to be mindful of words. Now, he said, there is nothing that you will cover. Now, I'm not coming at you again, Tuesday. I don't want you to think that I'm coming at you, but I'm just telling you, you have to be mindful of using words, all right? Because you live in a country where they are not in favor of what you say. They don't want you to educate your people. They don't want you to see things as it is, all right? So, all right, let me leave it that way. Now, but I'm just telling you, be mindful of words. So I am not radical. I am not a radical being. I'm just a Pan-Africanist. Now, there's nothing that you will cover that is more radical than the work of John Henrik Clarke. Now, I'm not comparing myself with John Henrik Clarke. I am a believer. I am a follower. I learn from him. All right? Amos Wilson and the rest. I don't understand what you're trying to say here. Because John Henrik Clarke himself, he did not give up on a struggle. He learned from other people that came after him. Okay? And other people that John Henrik Clarke learned from, they also learned from other people that came after him. And why did that happen? Because the struggle continued. So are you telling me that there's nothing that I'm going to talk about that was never spoken in the past? So are you telling me I should just sit and says, you know what? Nothing going to happen. Even if I discuss, even if I don't discuss, nothing going to happen. Because Dr. King came and spoke about it, nothing happened. Malcolm X spoke about it, nothing happened. But guess what? Something happened when Dr. King spoke. Something happened when Malcolm X spoke. Something happened when Rosa Parks and the rest, when they took action. And because of what it did, that is why today we are in some position. If they were silent, I can tell you the position we are in today, we was never going to be in that position. That is why Nelson Mandela said the struggle continues. So are you telling me where Nelson Mandela stopped, we should stop and say, okay, you know what? Nelson Mandela did what he could do. So, I mean, we should just stop. Things is fine. Everything is okay. No. Nelson Mandela said the struggle continue because the issue of one African is the issue of all African. Because of you, I am. Because of me, you are. So we are not there yet. So I don't understand what she's trying to say here, but I think she tried to clarify it. So are you telling me the Socialist Party, what they are doing is useless? So I don't understand. I'm not coming at you, but I think this statement is not clear here. For real, it's not clear. All right? This statement is not clear. Yeah. So sometimes we have to be careful on how we just write. I'm not coming at you, but I'm just telling you we have to be careful. Do not discourage folks who take their time to come up here. Folks who take their time to sacrifice. What we are doing here, we are sacrificing. Because it can make me not to even get a job. Of course, you know who have the job to give you and myself job. So what I'm doing here, I'm sacrificing myself. I may not get a job. I may go apply for a job. They might look on Facebook. They might look on YouTube to see these things. And they'll be like, but this is a man that said this, and he's coming forward to give him job. So that alone, you don't discourage people who come up here to tell them there is nothing you can say that this person, it was never said. All right? We black folks, you have to repeat things over and over and over before they get it. And that is why we should continue. We appreciate those who came after us and they fought. But they told us it's not yet over. We should continue from where they stop. And we should learn from that and continue with it. So I hope you get that. So I want you to come back a little bit and make this clear because I don't understand. Like I said, I am not a radical person. Please be careful with the use of word here. I am not radical. I'm just a Pan-Africanist. All right. So, all right, folks. I'm not going to be distracted. All right, so Dr. Phill says, or he says, giving reparation to black people is useless. It's a disaster. Okay? If you give money to black people, they have no business idea. They have no business mindset. Okay? All black people are going to do is to buy drugs, is to buy guns, is to buy weed, marijuana. Okay? All black people will do with reparation is to get on the street. That is what he meant by disaster. If something is, when you say disaster, then something is bad. Okay? It's not good. It's not going to have no good impact. That is what disaster is. It's going to be chaos. That is what disaster is. All right? So what I'm saying here is we have to be careful on some of these white folks. Also on some of these black folks. Because black folks has also come and said reparation is useless. All right? So we have to be careful and mindful of people like that. All right? So let's get into it. I don't want to talk too much, but let's get into it. And then I'm going to talk when we get into it. So let's see what Dr. Phill says about reparation. All right? Let's see what he said about reparation. Let's see what he said about reparation. Let me see this. No, not this. Okay. All right. We're going to discuss this, all right? So I have some research that I'm going to bring out. But let's see what he says about reparation. So this is Dr. Phill. I don't know whether he's on your right or on your left, but he's on my right. Let's say, sorry, on my left. All right? He's on my left. So according to it, or to him, he's a doctor, okay? But let's see what this doctor says about Black people or African people receiving reparation.
If you gave Black people money, yeah, I knew this would happen eventually. Dr. Phill says it would be an absolute disaster if you gave Black people money for reparations. Here it is.
The first condition is that reparations should be paid to Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved in the United States. And this would require an expenditure of $14 trillion, which would be distributed evenly across the 40 million Black American descendants of U.S. slavery. That would be approximately $350,000 per person.
If you take $350,000 or $840,000 and you write a check to any group of people, Black, white, poor, homeless, whatever, you give any group of people that much money and say, there you go, best of luck, and you come back in 6 months, they're going to be broke. So whatever reparations are done, that would be an absolute disaster as opposed to guidance and help in creating generational wealth as opposed to income.
So let me discuss something here. Did you see what critical race theory have done to African people? Did you see what critical race theory have done to Black people? Look at this girl face. Look at this girl face right here. Did you know that she already agreed? She already agreed with this guy sitting in there called Dr. Phill. Did you know that she already agreed? See her facial expression. And she shook her head like, yes, she agreed to what he was saying. So at this point, I'm not going at this queen sitting right there. No, I'm not going on her, because when you are ignorant to something, you have no idea, I don't blame you. All right? Because that's how the educational system of America have destroyed Black people, have made Black people to look ignorant to the reality. She already agreed. She has agreed that giving reparation to anybody, first of all, it seems that she does not know that reparation is an American history. America have given reparation to other folks. So if she knew that reparation is an American history, she was never going to sit in there to agree with that nonsense coming from Dr. Phill Muff. If only she know, or she knew that reparation had been given to other people in this country by Congress, by the United States government, I don't believe she was going to sit in there and agree. I believe she was the one going to question Dr. Phill that, hold a minute, what you just said, I don't think I agree with you. Reparation have been given to other folks. And by the way, you can't say to anybody. So in order to throw away their attention, he said, any group of people. If you give reparation to any group of people, no, group of people in this country have received reparation from the United States government. So who are the group of people you're talking about here by saying any group of people? That's how they do it, to make you feel that we are all the same. But no, we are not all the same. Reparation is an American history. America have given reparation, not one time, not two times, not three times, not four times to other group of people in this country. But because of critical race theory that says you cannot teach African history, because if you teach African history, there will be a word of the system. There will be a word. And when they are aware and educated, we cannot manipulate their mind. An educated mind is not easily manipulated. An uneducated mind is easily manipulated. That is not to say this queen is not educated. But what I'm saying here is she's not aware of the making. She's not aware of certain things. She's not aware of certain history. She's not aware of her own history. If she was aware of her history, I don't think she was going to sit in there and agreed with her head. And that is why critical race theory is a threat to our identity, to our freedom, to our movement, to our unity. Let's continue. Tizu, I hope you're listening. I hope you are listening. I'm not coming at you, but I'm just telling you, I hope you are listening. I know there are people better than me who can fight this. I know there are people who are better than me who can fight this. I am not here to measure arm as to who's supposed to fight for reparation. What I'm telling you here is, because I am because of you. We all got to chip in. We all got to contribute. And that is the African unity we are talking about. If I see something affecting you, I should come along with you. I'm not going to say I was not born in America. I was not, I don't have, or how to call it, I'm not attached to someone who was enslaved. Because the moment we start coming with those notions, we are not going to work together. Because the forces against us, they are working together. They are one. So I think it is about time we should do away with those mentality. Because at the end of the day, what affected you here, it also affected me on the African continent in the same system. Let's get that clear. Let's continue.
Right.
That would be an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster, as opposed to guidance and help in creating generational wealth as opposed to income.
Right.
That would be an absolute disaster.
Don't you dare allow this con artist to persuade you away from the real conversation. He is a con artist, in my humble opinion. Let me tell you why I think Phill cons people. He masquerades as if he is some kind of redeemer by exploiting the problems of everyday human beings and typically not providing the holistic support required to create a generational remedy for the dysfunction. Now, Dr. Phill decided to opine on reparations. He's factually incorrect on a few things. Number one, Doc, you owe your entire damn career to a black woman named Oprah. You need to be careful here. Facilitating the conversation is one thing. Trying to take it over is something else. Professor Doherty had some good points, and he was making a calculation based on the question given directly to him. Not the only way, possibly, to do reparations, but I'm going to break down how actually America is for reparations. Dr. Phill likely is for those reparations as well. Here it is. So Dr. Phill has some folks on social media dragging him to hell after he said providing cash reparations for slavery will be an absolute disaster. During an episode of his talk show on April 18th, the talk show host made the statement after the economist from Duke University, Professor William A. Doherty Jr., who said 14 trillion should be distributed evenly to the 40 million black descendants of slavery in America. That comes out to $350,000 per person, holistically inadequate. The payments would be an attempt to help eliminate the wealth disparity between black and white Americans, which he said is about 840,000. The professor co-authored the book From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. Let me say this about the concept of reparations, because some people get it confused with a handout. You see, reparations means repair. That's what it means, typically in the context of governmental repair. And in order for you to get to that repair, you must acknowledge that something has been broken. Once you acknowledge something has been broken, you then seek to find what or who broke it, because they are responsible to fix it. Well, in this case, we're talking about the United States government. The government broke it. So when there's an argument about, well, this is about white people paying for black people, hell no. I pay taxes. That means that my tax dollars will go to the same reparations that we're trying to correct. Everybody pays taxes in America, all right, virtually. So you go to this argument of, well, they're not ready for the money. That's basically what Dr. Phill is saying. Now, he tried to straighten it up afterwards by saying, oh, hey, I'm talking about any group of people. No, you weren't. That the whole damn show, sir, is about reparations to black folk, not just reparations. Reparations to black people.
All right, so that's what the show was about, right? We're going to get into it, all right, to bring some evidence out about this whole reparation issue. All right, so reparation, like he said down there, right? Like the reporter said, it's about repair, okay? And damages that was caused, all right? Damages that was caused by certain group of people or to certain group of people or to an entity, right? You have to repair those damages. Reparation also means accepting your guilt and paying for your guilt. All right? Now, it's not going to come from individuals. It's going to come from the government. So governmental repair of African people. Do you think slavery have ended in America here? Slavery is still going on. Slavery did not end in 1865. It was just rebranded. As many of you know, as many people know, it was just rebranded. All right? So Dr. Phill says, giving reparation to African people or to black people, they are going to misuse the money. In after 2 or 3 months or a year, they're going to come back complaining to the government about being broke, about being poor, about living in poor community. That is what he's saying. So in a manner, It shouldn't be given to them because it will be useless. Because they will not know how to use the money. But guess what? Reparation have been given to other people. Did it cause disaster? Because we know reparation have been given to a lot of people in this country. So the question here is, the question to Dr. Phill is, did it cause disaster? Why anytime, if there is something pertaining to Black people in this country, to elevate Black people, it become bad, it become ugly. So reparation have been given to other folks. It was never a disaster. It have never caused any problem. But let's see here. Let's not go into it too much. Let's see here because we got a lot to discuss. So let's see what reparation have done to the United States. Let's see if it was a disaster. Let's see something here, okay? If it was a disaster, let's see what reparation did. So this is what reparation did in 1862, okay? The Homestead Act, all right? I'm not going to go into it because a lot of people already know, all right? I'm just going to brush over it because this is something people already, how do you call it, know, right? So in 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Homestead Act on May 20, 1862. On January 1st, 1863, Daniel Freeman made the first claim under the act, which gave citizens or future citizens up to 160 acres of public land, provided they live on it, improve on it, and paid a small registration fee. The government granted more than 270 million acres of land while the land was in effect. Now, we are talking about 1862 or 1863, right? This was before slavery ended. So what does that mean? Mainly, particularly, all right, this benefit was given to white folks, was given to white farmer, was given to slave owner, mainly, because at that time, resources was not allocated equally between white folks and Black folks. At this time period, Black folks were still a plantation, how do you call it, workers. Black people at this time were still property. So I don't think you're going to distribute wealth, okay, among white and Black. At that time, where Black were property to white people. All right. Now, Dr. King clearly explained this. He explained it more than me, but I'm just reminding Dr. Phill and the queen, the Black queen that was sitting in there, agreeing to everything he said. Now, this was not just on the land, as Dr. King said. Financial support were also given to white folks. Not only that, they were uneducated about farming, about land. They also provided grants to train white folks how to farm. They trained and they educated them. That reparation, that compensation was never given to Black. Did they cause disaster by training white people to farm land? Did they cause disaster when resources were given to white people? Did they cause disaster? I don't think so, Dr. Phill. There was no disaster caused. I will leave that there. That was reparation giving. That was compensation giving to white folks. No disaster was there. And by the way, that compensation or reparation that was given to white folks, there is something called generational wealth. So it was passed on to their generation, from one generation to another generation, from one generation to another generation. It was passed on. So when we're talking about compensation or reparation, we are talking about generational wealth here. Let's take that out and look at another one. All right, so I'm going to be reading some comment here because we got to make it interactive. All right. Your part said, I stand with my wife. Don't even like calling it reparation. Okay. Because money can't repair what was done to our people. Again, that said, it is owned. You might be right. Exactly. I mean, money cannot repair. We all know that. Money cannot repair what have been done. Because life we are taking. Okay? Life we are taking. And not just life. What was done. Okay? The effect of what was done, we are feeding it today. The effect of what was done, we are still feeding it today. But what we are saying here is, just how compensation where I was giving to other people in the past. And those people, today, they are descending, their generation, okay, are uplifted. They are not in the condition to which we are in. So we are not saying the damages that was caused, okay, reparation can pay it back, and then that's it, then we're done with it. The Jewish, they did receive reparation, right? But does that mean the history has been wiped away? Does that mean it's gone? The history is there. But what happened here is, instead of keeping the Jewish descendant in poverty, it uplifted them today. So sometimes when we having discussion like this, we have to know how to discuss it. We are not saying it's going to pay off the people that was raped, that was broken, that was thrown overseas, the people that labor for 400 plus years. That is not what we are saying, that reparation is going to like pay it and then it's done. The Japanese, the history is still there. Okay? But at least it uplifted those that left back and put them in a level of position to survive. That is what we are saying here. Okay? What was done to them was recognized. That is what we are saying here. It was recognized that it was against human rights. That is what we are saying here. So if it was given to other people, why can't it be given to black? So if that was the case, that reparation, how they call it, can't ease any problem, why was reparation given to other people? That's the point. So if it is given to other people, why it can't be given to black people? Let us be real here. So does that mean we agree with Dr. Phill? Do we agree with what Dr. Phill said? Do we agree with what other people are saying? Why should we agree to it? But the Japanese did not agree to it, though. The Jewish did not agree to it. Other people did not agree to it. Why should we agree to it? So does that mean we acknowledge what our people went through? I know we don't acknowledge it, and there is no amount of finance or financial existence can acknowledge it. But what we are saying here is the life you are living, I don't think you want for your children to come and live that life. You want to create a foundation, okay, for your children to come and live that life. You don't want for your children to come and start struggling. You don't want for your children to come to continue with this discussion, what you are going through. Let's continue here. Let's continue with the next topic. Let's continue here. The next topic. So does that mean we agree? We actually agree with what Dr. Phill said. We agree with it that we don't need how they call it, reparation, because there's no amount of money that will be given to Black people that will solve the issue of what happened in the past. Then why are we still struggling from things that happened from the past? Why are we still struggling from things that happened from the past? Why people are living the benefit from slavery? Why are people still living the benefit from torturing African people? Why the descendants of the slaveholder are benefiting from generational wealth? Why? All right, let's continue. Sorry, folks, but sometimes I don't know why should we be the one to All right, let's continue. So another history of reparation that was given to other people by the United States government. Another history. So why these people that receive this compensation, they not complain and say, you know what, we don't need it. Because there's no amount of money that you will give us that will erase what went against us. Or there's no amount of money or compensation that you will give us that will solve what went on. Why these people did not make such statement? Why these people did not stop the United States government and say, no, we don't need reparation. We don't need the money because it's not going to do anything. It's not going to pay for the torture and suffering our people went through. Why these people did not do it? Only Black people, only African people will always say these things. Reparation cannot solve the problem our people went through. No amount of money can solve. Why? Why only us? This is why it's very difficult for African people to unite. It's very difficult. It's difficult for us to unite. These are some of the reasons. But let's continue here. I will just end the topic. I will continue with the topic. Let's just continue. All right. Now, the true history of reparation in the United States. In the 20th century, the country issued reparation for Japanese American internment, native land seizure, massacre, and police brutality. Now, are we not expressing police brutality? People receive reparation for police brutality. People did receive reparation for police. I didn't write it here. This is a history channel in the first place, as you can see. So people receive reparation for police brutality. So the question then becomes, will slavery be next? People receive reparation for police brutality. People receive reparation from being killed. Will these people receive reparation? All right, so I will start from here. The paper will check for $20,000 accompanied by a letter of apology for the internment of over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. They were the first issue under the Civil Liberty Act of 1988, a historic law that offered monetary redress to over 80,000 people. Do you know why African people are still being humiliated and treated the way they are being treated in the 21st century? It's because those that did it and they are dissenting have now come to even apologize. If someone apologized of their wrongdoing, they will not continue of the treatment their forefathers did to you. Since these people apologize to the Japanese American, do you see any Japanese being gunned down on the street? Do you see Japanese people living in abject poverty where black people live? Look at Japanese community. That is what that reparation was for. To uplift the next generation so that the next generation cannot come and live in abject poverty. Cannot live in neglected community. Cannot live in neglected neighborhood. Because when you apologize for a wrongdoing, you accept what you did. And you will not do it again. Because it will serve as a reminder. So we are not just asking for reparation or talking about reparation, but we are telling folks to accept their wrongdoing so that some of these things will stop. So again, Dr. Phill and people that agree with Dr. Phill, apologies given to the Japanese, reparation given to the Japanese, did it cause disaster? Look at the life of the Japanese today. Is it the same as African people in this country? Look at the Japanese neighborhood. Is it the same as the neighborhood of African people in this country? So what is a disaster did it cause? Today, the law is remembered as the most successful push for reparation for a historic wrong in U.S. history. So, wow. So now, folks, do you see some of the things, like what we are saying here? Do you see how critical race theory is making black people to look stupid. So they are saying, now, what I'm saying here is, I'm not saying what was done to the Japanese or Japanese American was good. But they are saying it was more horrible than what was done to black people in this country. I'm not the one saying it. But what they say here, today, the Lord is remembered today, 2021. That's the 2023. The Lord is remembered as the most successful push for reparation, for a historic wrong in U.S. history. But the United States track record of reparation and official apologies is scattershot, and it has yet to tackle one of its most glaring injustice: the enslavement of African American. Now, folks, when we are saying reparation to the African descendant, we are not just saying money. We are saying just how the United States have apologized to other folks and accepted its wrongdoing. And up to today, you don't hear about police brutality against Japanese. These are some of the things we are asking for. Because the American police force have come to realize and recognize that if they took oath to serve and protect property and human beings, they are no longer going to go back to the old days where they would torture Japanese or Japanese American, because they have accepted that. That is what we are talking. So until America can recognize what she has done to African people and what she's still doing, we're not just talking about reparation and money, that's it. But if one can accept what they did, it was wrong, that means they are coming to a conclusion or understanding of how to coexist. So we can see why America and Japanese American coexist. But how about black people? So again, Dr. Phill, and to some of you that agree with Dr. Phill, did it cause disaster by giving reparation or compensation to black people? Let's continue here again to the next push. Let's go to the next push. Let's go to the next push. Let's go to the next push. All right. Another compensation that was given to slave owner. So again, Dr. Phill, and those that agree with Dr. Phill, compensation was given to slave owner. Did it cause disaster? Or it caused generational wealth? Well, today the descendant of the slave owner are living in a glorious moment. On April 16, 1862, the District of Columbia compensated Emancipation Act became law. Now, the article says, pause for a minute to consider how much compensation would have been offered to the people who suffer torture and other human rights abuses and whose labor and family were stolen for generations. The answer is zero. No compensation was given to them, have been given to them. But compensation was or were given to slave owner. Because black people as a property. This is what's still affecting black people today, because people still view us as you were once my property. And until people can recognize what they did and apologize to black people, we will be still facing that effect. The federal government compensated the owner of enslaved people for their loss of property. The federal government compensated owner of enslaved people for their loss of property. The people who were free were not compensated, none giving any assistance for the transition to their freedom. But rather, the people who owned slaves were compensated because their property were being free. They were compensated for pain. The people who went through torture for 400 years of pain, suffering, torture, everything possible you can think of, they did not compensate them. But people who own this property, who own this plantation, they were compensated for pain. What kind of pain did they cause? Now, again, I'm not going to read the whole article, but it's there. But people that were compensated, did they cause disaster or it caused generational wealth? Today, their descendants are enjoying from it. Let's continue. Let's continue to the next page. Let's continue to the next page. Let's continue to the next page. What's the next one I want to talk about? All right, this is just recently, okay? So let's look at this. During World War II, the United States forcibly relocated and incarcerated at least 125,000 plus people of Japanese descent. Listen to the word dissenting. In 75 identified incarceration sites, most live on the Pacific coast in concentration camp. Today, if we want to talk about this concentration camp, the prison system, the jailhouse today, in the western interior of the country, approximately 2/3 of the inmates today, to date, who are the most populated prisoner in the American jailhouse system. Let's continue. Those actions were initiated by President Franklin D. Roosevelt via an executive order shortly after Imperial Japan attacked on Pearl Harbor. All right? Now, all these human rights abuses by the Japanese American, the United States Congress the United States government recognized that these things were against human rights. And what they did to these people, they did not come even close to what was done to black people in this country. But they recognized it as it was a human right abuse. That is not to say I don't agree that it was human right abuse. But what it did to them, it was nothing compared to what was done to black people in this country. But see what it did recently. But before recently, let's see something they did here. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed into law the Civil Liberty Act of 1988, which officially apologized again, for the incarceration of on behalf of the U.S. government and authorized a payment of $20,000 equivalent to $46,000 in 2021. So $20,000 was given to each family. So today, in 2021 or in 2021, that amount could be about $46,000 to each former detainees who was still alive when the act was passed. But listen, it did not end there, all right? The legislation admitted that government action were based on race prejudice. Is this not what's still happening against black people? So when we're talking about reparation, we are not talking about, oh, because when they give money, that is not going to solve what happened to our people. When we're talking about reparation here is we are also asking people to acknowledge what it did so that they can stop. They continue doing. Wrongfully putting black people in prison. Wrongfully accusing black people. It was based on race prejudice, okay? War, hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. Is not what's still happening? By 1992, just recently, not leaving alone, recently, by 1992, the United States government eventually disbursed more than 1.6 billion United States dollars in 1992. So equivalent to 3.67 billion in 2021 in reparation to 82,000 plus Japanese American who had been incarcerated. Let me take this out again. Let me take this out. Folks, these are all reparation given to people who today they are elevated, who today they are descending, and no longer are not in deplorable condition to some extent as compared to African descendant. So what wrong with African descendant receiving reparation? What is wrong? Why should we be against ourselves? Why should we say no amount of reparation can ease or can solve what they did to our people? That is not a discussion, and that should not be the discussion. So does that mean we should continue to live in abject poverty? We should continue to live what our parents went through? But the Japanese American, the descendant, they are not going through what their parents went through. They are not in abject poverty. They are not living on the deplorable condition. They have good health care in their community. They got good educational system in their community. They got good businesses in their community. They have good food in our community. But look at the food they bring to our community. Look at the food they bring to the black community. Full of disease, full of sicknesses. Look at our educational system in the black community. Is it compared to the Japanese American? These are the things we're talking about. We are not saying that reparation going to solve the issue of what. No, that's not what we are saying. But what we are saying here is we also need a generational wealth to build for our next generation that will come after us, so that they can come and continue living in the same living condition we are in. And because of generational wealth, the descendant of the, how they call it, the slave owner, they are living free. They are living good. They went to good school. They have good school in their environment. So are you telling me the descendant of the Jewish, they are not getting generational wealth? So do you see? So some people will say, I was not the one that enslaved African people. But listen, the descendant of Hitler are still alive today. The descendant of Hitler are alive today. Okay? The descendant of Harriet Tubman, they are alive today. They are still alive. So if Harriet have gotten a good life to lay a good foundation for her descendant, the descendant of Harriet will not be in abject poverty, because the mother, that generation, was going to provide good means for her descendant. Malcolm X, his descendant, they are alive today. The great-great-grandfather of Malcolm X, and are going to have a good life and live good foundation for Malcolm X. Do you think Malcolm X could have been in the situation he was in? He was going to continue with that legacy for the next generation. That's what we are saying here. And that even go to the African continent. The descendants of Thomas Sankara are alive. The descendants of Petro Lumumba, they are alive. The descendants of Amilcar Cabral, they are alive. But guess what? Not only that, the descendant of the slaveholder, the descendant of how they call it, George Washington, they are alive. Because George Washington has slave, he owned slave, and that is generational wealth. They are alive. By owning slave, by making African people, black people property, they are alive. Because that wealth, that generational wealth started from making black people property and working on their plantation. They are alive. They are enjoying it. The descendant of Thomas Jefferson, they are alive. What are you talking about here? The descendant of James Maroon, they are alive. Another slaveholder, another man who tortured African people, they are alive. And they are living that generational wealth. So how can you say, I wasn't there at that time, I did not do it to black people or to your people, but your people did it. And you are living a glorious life from the proceed of what it did to African people. So are you telling me the seeds of Jefferson ended? The seeds of Thomas Jefferson, when he died, then his seeds ended. That was it. Are you telling me George Washington, when he died, his seeds ended? That was it. No. Are you telling me when he died, that wealth ended? That was it, a cut, a finish? No. So his children, his descendants, will never face poverty. That's what we're talking about. That is what we're talking about. So we are not just sitting here talking because we want to talk. But when each time people come and mock African people, we have to talk. Because what Dr. Phill did down there was mocking African people. And our innocent sister, little sister, sat down there and agreed. And that's how many of you agree to these people, because you do not know your history. You do not know your story. Well, let me show you a video here, okay? So people are refused to give you reparation, but see how they are giving reparation to other people in 2023. See how the American government is giving reparation, is giving compensation to people in 2023. Man, listen to this. See this here. So this is compensation, okay? Compensation, the United States government, all right? Your vice president, Kamala Harris, went to the African continent, all right, to give compensation to a certain group of people that is not even necessary. They are talking about human rights. See the kind of human rights they are giving money to.
Meddling amid Vice President. It's not going well for Kamala Harris. They sent her to Africa to make friends.
This should...
And she can't make friends at home. I don't know what.
Oh, she's half as charming there as she is here.
It says leaders in Ghana, Zambia slammed the United States for undemocratic meddling amid Vice President Harris's tour of Africa. Well, it sure sounds bad if you say it like that.
Wait.
Undemocratic meddling?
Oh, no, that's for the other one.
Come on. Undemocratic.
That's for his...
I got it.
Yeah.
So watch this. So this is the guy. He's the Zambian opposition leader. His name is Fred Menembe. This is his speech during the visit from Kamala Harris. This is the speech during her visit. Okay, ready?
A country that has toppled so many governments in Africa, that has led so many coups in Africa and other parts of the world, a country that has killed so many of our leaders in Africa and other parts of the world, the killers of Patrice Lumumba, those who toppled Kwame Nkrumah, those who killed Nasser, those who killed Muammar Gaddafi, today are coming to teach us about democracy. A country that has been built on brutal force, on enslavement of other human beings, on the humiliation of Africans, the exploitation of Africans, the plunder of Africa. today is coming to teach us about democracy. If you have no respect for the dignity of others, if you have no respect for the sovereignty of other countries, you cannot claim to be a champion of democracy.
Bam. That's the African stream. Bam.
Oh, they should have heard her giggling as he sang it.
Yeah. So he's laying it out. America, you are the imperialists. You killed all our African leaders. You pillage our natural resources. You come in and you're going to lecture us about democracy.
Sir, Kamala Harris doesn't know anything about that stuff.
And this is from, again, their official Twitter, African Stream, says, no China obsession here. So now watch, here is, this is from Ghana. So he's going to watch what he says about China and the United States.
No, there may be an obsession in America about Chinese activities on the continent, but there's no such obsession here. But China is one of the many countries with whom Ghana is engaged in the world. No country is one of them. Virtually all the countries of the world are friends of Ghana.
That's right. Everybody in the world is friends of Ghana. And I guess he's just calling America just like another hoe.
Yeah,
right?
I see a lot of countries.
That's hurtful.
Well, Ghana's the one they always said was the least corrupt, and that's like even the neoliberal rags.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to like trash Ghana if that's what they're saying. They're the ones that the same neoliberals said was like the good one.
So this is not Africa is done, it seems like, with the United States, especially now it's turned to Russia and it's turned to China to make peace, to make investments in their continent. The United States just comes in, like they said, and they kill their leaders and meddle in their politics. Remember this? South African politician says he'll pick Putin up from the airport to avoid arrest. So Africa is turning on the United States. Russia writes off $20 billion in debt to African countries. I thought we were kicking their ass in this Ukraine war and we were crushing their economy, and their economy is so crushed they can write off $20 billion in debt to Africa. Really? My God, Putin he's rebuilding communism.
You just forgive debt.
Writing off debt?
Yeah.
That's communism.
It's called moral hazard. Putin.
Can Harris visit shore up relations with Africa? That's the question in Foreign Policy magazine. Can Kamala Harris visit shore up relations with Africa?
Surely they knew the answer to the question before they finished typing the question.
The only way it could work is if Kamala Harris can giggle their relationship. The vice president's trip is the latest effort to counter Moscow's and Beijing influence on the continent with a giggle, with the left. She's laughing right there.
Yeah.
It's a good looking suit, though. I got to say, I kind of like that suit. I like the color. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris began her 3-nation Africa tour on Saturday, landing in Accra, Ghana, as part of a visit that includes stops to Tanzania and Zambia. She is the 18th and most senior U.S. official to visit Africa this year, as the United States looks to loosen Russia's and China's alliance with African nations. Wow. We already tried throwing Anthony Blinken at this problem, and somehow that didn't work. You remember they sent Anthony Blinken over there?
We got to bring out the big guns.
Mm-hmm. And they said the same shit right to his face, by the way. Despite the heavy charm offensive... Boy, if there's one name I think of when I hear heavy charm offensive, it's Kamala Harris.
Well, Blinken and then Harris, don't spoil them.
She's over there she's facing a barrier in undoing years of what many Africans perceived as previous U.S. administrations' undervaluing of the strategic relationship that Africa states can offer. But the message now from Washington's diplomats is that the United States foreign policy is committed to moving away from what has traditionally been a relationship more focused on national security partnerships to one with a focus on grassroots developments.
What does that mean? Medical experiments on the populace?
That's what it sounds like. Wow. Anyway. Well, it's just funny. They have Kamala Harris doing a charm offensive in Africa. Why doesn't she try to do that here?
Yeah. Why don't we move our foreign policy? Well, instead of focusing on national security, we want to focus on grassroots development.
There is a certain amount of skepticism from African governments and citizens. Many are aware that the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war is behind the renewed interest. The official stance from these countries is that they are not aligned with either Russia or the West in this war. Wow. Really? So when they say there's a certain amount of skepticism from African governments and citizens, I think they mean utter disbelief. I think that's what they mean. Others, such as South Africa, have appeared on friendlier terms with Russia, controversially hosting joint naval exercises that coincided with the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Wow, there's a thumb in your eye. Historical issues beyond the war complicate matters, though. Kurt, did you know that?
It's complicated, you guys.
It's complicated. While the Soviet Union had supported independent movements and the anti-apartheid struggle, the U.S. government designated today's ruling African National Congress a terrorist organization during the Cold War.
It's complicated.
So Russia was all on the side of independence in Africa, as the United States was calling their African National Congress a terrorist organization.
It's not that we loved apartheid. It's just that we hated communism so much that we didn't care if they had to have apartheid.
They had to have it.
So that's
right.
not the same as being evil, right?
But sure, we did that. Sure, the U.S. government said that they were all terrorists
right
during the Cold War, but I think they're forgetting America opposed apartheid in the most important way of all, Kurt.
Yeah.
By making Lethal Weapon 2. Don't you remember that?
That's what I could credit with ending it.
I agree.
Lethal, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson ended that practice. Wait, I just realized that during the Cold War, so they called Mandela was called a terrorist in the Cold War.
Yeah.
And bin Laden was called a freedom fighter in our own papers.
That's right.
Great. Complicated.
It's complicated. Last month, African nations still accounted for nearly half of all abstentions on the UN General Assembly resolution that condemned Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken suggested this history was making it difficult to change African countries' decades-long relationship with Moscow.
You suggested maybe that could be?
You know, when Africans bring up America supporting apartheid, I just think that's whataboutism.
Yeah. We can talk about that. Not now. Yeah. Right now, we got to talk about Russia.
Listen to this, Kurt. Unfortunately, more than unfortunately, the United States was too sympathetic to the apartheid regime. So that history also doesn't get erased, overnight. It's a process. That's what Antony Blinken said.
We're trying to seize control of the internet to work on that.
Kurt, how many more Lethal Weapons movies is it going to take to fix this problem?
There's going to take 3 more.
I like how it says, unfortunately, more than unfortunately, the United States was much too sympathetic to the apartheid regime. I wonder if there are any groups in the world that the United States is currently being too sympathetic to.
Can't think of one.
I have not seen any of them lately. Oh, wait, maybe the Nazis in Ukraine. So that guy we showed you before, Fred Mbembe, the leader of Zambia's Socialist Party, he said that his country is playing a key role in the United States anti-China crusade. It's not democracy and human rights they are pursuing in Africa. They are pursuing their geopolitical interests. They are pursuing their own economic interests. It's not for us, it's for them, Mbembe said.
Yeah, no kidding. If you bring it up to somebody who thinks America should intervene everywhere, they'll go, well, that's the reality. We got to do stuff.
We got to do.
Well, these are the people that you got to do stuff to do that. And you think they're going to fall for it?
Kurt, what's good for the United States is good for democracy,
Oh, that's true. If it is democracy itself, yeah.
Historically, the United States and Europe led their engagements through the prism of Africa as a problem to fix. whereas China focused on trade, becoming the region's largest partner. So when the United States looked at Africa as a problem to fix, what that means is that historically we murder their leaders whenever we want.
Yeah, like
That's what that
that
means.
was the problem we fixed.
That's the problems. We got another problem we got to fix. And so I don't have to show you this, but this was when Anthony Blinken went there last, I think it was August. When is this from? Yeah, August. So when Anthony Blinken went there, they said the same thing. That she was there. That's the Naledi Pandor. She's the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa. And she said the same stuff. I don't need to show it to you. So not going well for Kamala Harris. She's got a tough job. I got to say, she's got a tough job turning the people of Africa around after we, killed their leaders and done all the stuff to them. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. Good luck, Kamala. Hope you laugh it up. Go to jimmydore.com to see my new stand-up special.
All right, so just to add to that, right? Just to add to what he just said. So, by the way, the reason why I brought this is I call it fun fat. It's fun, and you saw them laughing in there, right? But what is said in there is actual truth. So, this is one reason Obama said, right? Democracy is failing because people are no longer listening to the media, because people have come to realize that the media is fake. The media is tools for propaganda. They don't bring the real true story. So that is why the American democracy is failing. The American fake democracy is failing, because people have come to realize that the so-called media of the America or Europe, they are all fake. They lie. They bring propaganda messages and information. They work alongside the government. But listen, let's go back to Kamala Harris. All right? Kamala Harris have gone on the African continent to preach, to give 60 million United States dollars to push gay. All right? And it said they are giving that amount for reparation. Her last visit she did, I think Zambia was the last nation she went to, right? When she went to the African continent. Okay? She said the United States government, Congress, gave $60 million to advocate for human rights on the African continent, to advocate for men and men to go lie down, for another man to go look in another man's box. All right? If you can give $60 million, how about the human rights abuses in America here? If you can give $60 million, okay, I would just say for compensation, okay, to go destroy African family, compensation to go destroy African culture, compensation, okay, to take African people back in time. If you can give $60 million, if you can advocate for $60 million to destroy African family, there are Africans in America here who are advocating for reparation. Okay, let's push that aside. Not just reparation now, right? But there are African in America here, advocating for human rights abuses. You on the African continent fighting for human rights abuses or abuse, because only the United States government or only the United States can recognize what human right is, what human right abuses or are. But when you get African in this country, so Kamala Harris, the African you reside over here, are they not facing abuses? Are they not facing human rights abuses? Why are you not talking for them? Why are you not telling Congress to bring $60 million to put it, okay, in the educational system of Black people, in the healthcare system for Black people? Why are you not advocating in Congress for the United States government to free African people who have been wrongfully jailed. Even you yourself, you wrongfully imprison African people. Is that not against human rights? Why are you not advocating for $60 million to free innocent people from prison? But you get a goddamn mind to go on the African continent with your money. We don't need your money to go destroy African people. When you destroy African people here systematically, but you go on the African continent as well to destroy African people with your money. In America here, you don't destroy African people financially, but you destroy them systematically. And then you go on the African continent, you destroy African people systematically with finances. Why can't you acknowledge the abuses African people face in this country? Why can't you bring money, compensation to help them, uplift them from abject poverty, uplift them from the horrible condition they are living in America here, all across the 50 states of the United States? African people, day and night, are crying to the United States government. Day and night, they are asking the United States government for financial support for their condition that they are systematically being put in. Their community, every black you see, you will see police car parking, hunting black people to take them to prison, hunting black people to put cases against them, to separate black family. Every block of black neighborhood, there is a police car, there is a police bicycle, there is police standing. But go to white neighborhood, they are living in heaven. You will drive upon drive, you will never see one police car. You will never see green or red light. You will never see purple. African people live in fear. You don't solve the problem of African people in America. You want to go on the African continent to solve the African people problem? You have handful of African in America, you don't solve their problem. How can you go on the African continent to solve billion? When there are thousands of Africans here, you cannot solve their problem. The just handful of African people in America, you don't solve their problem. You can never solve their problem. Can you solve billions of people? Can you solve an entire continent people problem? Look upon the African people here, search down here, and solve the problem African people go through here, than to go on the African continent with your money, your so-called money, to enslave them, to condition them, to destroy them. Keep that $60 million in America here. Give it to African in America here. And let them solve their problem. Let's continue to the next page. Now, first, let's go to Sudan. Let's go to Sudan. Now, let's go to Sudan. Now, South Sudan, sorry, because there is Sudan and there is South Sudan. All right? South Sudan gained her independence in 2011. Imagine. And who was the cause of separating South Sudan from Sudan? Because it was one country. Who was the cause, or who were the people behind it for this country to gain independence in 2011? We're going to see it here. And we're going to see the reason for the current crisis in Sudan. Who are the people behind it? And the reason for what it is going on. Let's listen to the video here. In this video, the narrator, for some reason, as you all know, because sometimes you don't want for your video to be taken down again, but the narrator stress on key theme. He stressed on it so that you can understand what is going on in Sudan. But don't worry. This is WCC, the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series, where we found information and get video. So even though in the video, he stressed on key point, but a level view to understand what is going on in Sudan, right? I brought information that after the video as well, I will give you that information and you will see what the narrator was saying in this video. I will bring it to you to tell you who behind it. Let's continue here.
and more importantly, why it is happening. There is so much that is happening in Sudan. In this video, we will learn about what is happening in Sudan and more importantly, why it is happening and what are the reasons behind it. I'll try to keep the entire explanation plain and simple so that you can understand it better. Alright then, let's begin. First, let me show you the country. Here is Sudan, right below Egypt. Sudan also has a coastline. There is so much that is happening in Sudan. In this video, we will learn about what is happening in Sudan.
Sorry, folks, I'm going to be going back and forth at time, all right? But I would like for the video to play. But I want to show you something here, first of all. Do you see these two individuals right here, right? 1 and 2. These are two generals, okay? These are two generals. Now, the question then becomes, before we even get into it, right? I want you to have that in mind. The question then becomes, and these two generals, by the way, these are two friends, okay? These are two friends, all right? These two friends overthrew the former president, Ahmad, okay? These two guys, these are two generals. But the question then is, why would these two generals go against one another? Why would these two generals split the army? One go one side and the other one go one side. What is going on here? Who are supporting these people, or who's supporting one of these men here, or one of these guys here? Who's supporting one? I want you to have that in mind. What is going on here? It's like the United States Army split into two. All right? The United States Army split into two. And then one general go one side, another general go one side. And they're fighting one another. And the two armies says they took an oath to protect life and property of Americans. But then what happened? The two generals split. And they are killing Americans. They are bombing America, destroying America. What happened? Why would that happen? Why would that be? Have that in mind as we get into it. All right? And again, I also want you to have in mind who supported these two generals to carry on coup d'etat, to remove the ex-president. Have that in mind. Let's continue.
And more importantly, why it is happening and what are the reasons behind it. I'll try to keep the entire explanation plain and simple so that you can understand it better. Alright then, let's begin. First, let me show you the country. Here is Sudan, right below Egypt. Sudan also has a coastline with the Red Sea. Now, there is also another country called South Sudan. Initially, it was all part of one country, that is Sudan. But then on July 9th, 2011, there was a referendum and South Sudan gained its independence from Sudan. Actually, since the 1980s, both the north and south of Sudan, they were constantly fighting each other in the form of a civil war. And if you want to know what the reasons behind this conflict are, it is mainly because of differences in religious practices, ethnicity, economics, and politics. The northern part of Sudan is primarily dominated by Arab Muslims, so they supported the government of Sudan. And then if you look at the southern part of Sudan, here there is a group called Sudan People's Liberation Movement or Army, SPLM/A. And this group was mainly composed of Black African Christians and others who follow traditional African religion. Now, I want you to listen to this carefully. Due to the differences between the government of Sudan, which was dominated by the Arab Muslims from the north, and the Sudan People's Liberation Movement/Army, which was composed mainly of Black African Christians and other Black Africans who follow traditional African religion, they are basically called animists from the south of the country. There was a devastating...
All right, so let me just add to that, all right, to what the narrator is saying here. Now, let me make this clear. There will always be problem among people, okay? There will always be problem. There will always be conflict. There will always be, how do you call it, situation. There will always be misunderstanding, all right? Now, let's look at this clearly. As you have heard in there, Muslim, Christian, traditionalists, three group of people, right? Muslim, Christian, traditionally. Now, the least in their discussion are the traditionalists, or let's say the cultural people, right? They are the least if you really want to look at it, if you study it critically. Now, the two powerful are the Christian and the Muslim. All right. Now, let's look at this. Who are the most populated religious group in Sudan? All right. By looking at the demographic and the region, I would say the Muslim. Pay attention where we are going. What am I saying here? The imperialists are very good. The colonizers are very good. The oppressors are very good. They will use the situation of African people. They will capitalize on the situation of African people to cause the chaos and capitalize on our chaos, to go in and execute their mission. Pay attention. These are three groups of people already, like the narrator is already outlining: traditionalists, Muslim, and Christian. What then happened for these people to clash? But history tells us that before the 1600s, before Europeans carried their nose on the African continent, at that time it was not even called African continent. We were not even African. That name African came from an Italian. We were never recognized as African. But the issue here is, there was no boundary. The continent was borderless. Pay attention here. We were traditionalists, as I want to put it. Because tradition was the major practice or practices where everybody have their own form of belief. Everybody have their own form of practice, where kingdom was classified as nations. Kingdoms were classified as nations. Kingdoms were classified as states. What am I driving up to? Although we have various languages, We have various cultures. We have various religious beliefs. We have various spirituality being practiced. We coexist among ourselves as African because in some other way, our spirituality coordinated. Our spirituality were recognized no matter how it was. We saw one another as one. Even though we practice different practices or religious practices or cultural belief, we still coexisted. That is not to say there was no problem. There was still problem. But it was very difficult to just infiltrate. But when European came with their religion, we start having problem. And they use their religion to devour us. Where we start fighting among one another. We start killing each other. We saw each other as enemies. They use our situation to capitalize on it, to infiltrate us and devour us and conquer and rule and exploit us. Pay attention. What's going on here? All right?
Civil war in Sudan that lasted for about 30 years. As a result of the conflict, an estimated 2 million people lost their lives and millions were displaced, and they were forced to leave their homes and seek refuge elsewhere. Then in Jan 2005, a comprehensive peace agreement was signed between the Sudan government and the SPLM/A. This agreement also had provisions for power sharing, wealth sharing, security and governance. This way, on July 9, 2011, South Sudan gained its independence and became Africa's 55th country. And can you guess who were the mediators? In other words, who came up with this comprehensive peace agreement? You can take a blind guess. It was the United Nations, the United States, and all the countries that exist on the African continent.
Now, again, I am leading you somewhere. I want you to understand the crisis in Sudan. Who were the main factors of South Sudan being a nation today, leaving Sudan, leaving the nation Sudan? The UN, the so-called UN again, the so-called UN, that biased organization, the United States and EU. What does that mean? When you're looking at it, what it means? South Sudan is a territory to the UN, the United States, and UK. South Sudan is a colony to the United States, UK, and the UN. Now, the question then becomes, why did it have interest in separating South Sudan? That's another question. So as we are looking at these things, we should be asking questions. Why did the UN, why did the United States and UK, all three of them, all those three entities, why did they have interest in separating Sudan from South Sudan? Or let's say South Sudan from Sudan. There was a reason. You may not see it in the video, but I will give you that reason. Let's continue. I just want you to have that in mind. Because as you have it in mind, as we continue on, you will get to understand who are the people behind the war in Sudan. Who is supporting one of the generals in Sudan? And why did they come to this far of the crisis in Sudan right now?
But the main international organization was United Nations, and the main country was the United States of America. And everyone knows that the United States is one of the founding members of the United Nations. and the US has played a significant role in the United Nations development. Now, officially, nowhere you will find that US controls the UN. However, if you critically examine things and study enough to gain a deep understanding of the power dynamics within the UN, you will realize that US controls UN to a great extent. So let me rephrase this sentence. The country that chose to be mediator and who came up with this comprehensive peace agreement between North and South Sudan is none other than the United States of America, basically the US government. Now that you have understood how South Sudan gained independence, let's come back to the present time. I have
Now, there is information the narrator have given you, but he don't want to go deep. But he told you now that you have understood how, first of all, South Sudan came to be separate from Sudan. You get the point. Who controls Sudan? The narrator also gave you a point by saying, by going to the UN. The narrator told you who controls the UN, the United States. And now the narrator also told you who were the force behind South Sudan becoming a separate nation. Right? Now you understand the war in Sudan. Okay? The question then began, does that mean one of the general, does that mean one of the general, the two generals fighting one another, one of them went apart and left the other general and went to seek help to another place? And of course, you know what I'm talking about. Does that mean one of the generals went to seek help from China? Does that mean one of the generals went to seek help from Russia? Does that mean one of the generals went to one of the superpower of the world right now and invite them for support? And the United States saw it as a threat? Pay attention. Let's continue.
given you a brief history, keep that in mind, because a lot of it is still relevant, and wherever required, you should be able to make connections between past and present. Now let's come to the main question of this video. What is currently happening in Sudan? So this time the problem is not between Sudan and South.
Now, sorry, let me go back. The narrator said, also the purpose of this video is to make connection between past and present. Make connection between past and present. Have that in mind as we will go on later on after the video to the article. All right, let's continue.
Sudan. This time, violence has erupted in the capital city of Khartoum and a few other nearby places. Now, who are the two parties that are fighting? On your left-hand side, this is General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan.
The guy you see here, one of the general, right? He along with the other general overthrew Amr Abha through the assistance of the United States. As we all know, the United States' consistent role on the African continent is to overthrow African government who are not in compliance with their policy, with their foreign policy. Pay attention. These two generals, the United States government supported them to carry on their coup to overthrow the former president. That's how the United States carried democracy on the African continent. Pay attention. The purpose of the video is to link past and present and understand the situation in Sudan. Let's continue. So could it be this guy is being supported by the United States? Abdul Fattah? Let's see.
Then on the right hand side, he is Deputy General Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo. He is also the leader of RSF, that is Rapid Support Forces, which is a paramilitary force in Sudan. So let me repeat again. On the left hand side, he is General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who is the general of the Sudanese army. And he is also the de facto ruler of Sudan, or you can call him the president. On the right hand side, Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo is also a general, but he is one rank junior to Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. So basically, he's the vice president. So
these are two generals, right? This guy speaking, he's a president. This guy speaking, he's a vice president. Why did they split? This guy is the man in control of the military. One of them is in control of the military, and one of them is going or advocating for surveillance government. And we all know the United States does not want a surveillance government. The United States have never advocated for surveillance government, because surveillance government democracy, the will of the people, the voice of the people, right? That's surveillance government there. But looking at the African continent, looking at the involvement of the United States, have the United States ever supported democracy on the African continent? Pay attention.
basically what is happening in Sudan is that the Sudanese army chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is now in a battle with his second in command, General Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo. So these are the two characters who have turned against each other and they are fighting for power in Sudan. And that is what has caused chaos in Sudan. But then simply pointing out these two characters is not the end of the whole story. There's a broader global power struggle behind this chaos in Sudan. So let me give you a little background of these two generals. As I already said, in 2011, South Sudan gained independence. But then what about the main country, Sudan? See, what you have to understand is that in Sudan, whoever became the state head, that is the president, they either came from civil society as a politician or they directly came from the military as a serving officer. Besides the president, there is also a prime minister in Sudan who is usually a politician and came into power through democratic elections. Omar al-Bashir was the head of Sudan, that is the president of Sudan, from 1989 to 2019. He became the president of Sudan on 30th June 1989. He was a military officer. When he came to power in 1989, he was a brigadier general in the Sudanese army. Now, as soon as he became the president in 1989, what he did was he abolished the position of prime minister. Basically, Omar al-Bashir, along with a group of army officers, overthrew the democratically elected government of Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi in 1989. And since then, he abolished, meaning there was no prime minister position in Sudan since 1989. Omar al-Bashir wanted to have all power to himself, and he wanted to rule Sudan without any external civil government. So he was the president of Sudan from 1989 to 2019. That means the whole civil war between North and South Sudan happened during his time. South Sudan gained independence in 2011, which also happened during his tenure. And after 2011, he was the one who was practically ruling and running Sudan. Now, what happened in 2019? In 2019, President Omar al-Bashir, he made Abdel Fattah al-Burhan Inspector General of the Sudanese Army. And then 2 months later, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, along with his Deputy General Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo, who was also his partner, they overthrew President Omar al-Bashir, and General Burhan got the top job and he became the President of Sudan on April 11, 2019. Now, how did Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo come into this picture? General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in 2015 was commanding Sudanese troops in Yemen as part of Saudi-led coalition force who were fighting against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. It was during that time both of them worked closely. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan was part of the Sudanese army, and Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo was head of the RSF, Rapid Support Forces, which is a separate paramilitary force of Sudan that was also deployed in Yemen. It is also said that President Omar al-Bashir, who himself was an army officer, he very well knew that the way he became the president in 1989 by overthrowing a civilian government, one day even he will be thrown out in a similar way. So he never fully trusted General Burhan. Omar al-Bashir started relying on Dagalo and the RSF as a counterweight to the regular armed forces. He hoped that it would be too difficult for a single armed group to depose him. But then both the generals, that is Burhan and Dagalo, they worked together and overthrew Bashir in April 2019. This is how both started working closely, and it was because of Muhammad Hamadan Dagalo's support, General Burhan became the president of Sudan in 2019. In the same year, that is in 2019, after becoming the president, General Burhan solidified Sudan's ties with global powers and regional players, including the United States and Israel. Now think.
All right. So now, pay attention again, right? Now you see, right? The president, Fattah, right? The one who is leading the army. What did he do? He brought the United States and Israel in, right? We're going to see an article, what happened after he came to the United States. Pay attention. South Sudan is a colony to the United States. All right? It's a colony to the United States. It's a territory to the United States. So something is going on behind the scene. The war in Sudan is not just for nothing. It's possible the other general fell apart and went to either Russia or China for support. And of course, we know what is going on the African continent right now. Of course, we know what is going on the African continent right now. The scramble for Africa. Everybody trying to have peace of Africa. So, how dare South Sudan? The Americans speaking now. How dare South Sudan? How dare Tangalo to go to other people for help? For a territory that we control, we exploit. And by the way, South Sudan is very rich. Very, very rich. Let's continue here. Now you understanding the war in Sudan. Right? Our African leaders are, most of them, some of them are too damn well stupid. I'm sorry to say this. I will say this on media live. Some of our African leaders, they are damn well stupid.
Think about it. If Sudan had to form relationships with countries like the United States and Israel, these are all democratic countries, right? So they have to look democratic, right? They cannot go and speak to the United States and say, hey, look, we are from the Sudanese military and we organized a coup and overthrew our government. So what they did was, in August 2019, they formed a body called the Transitional Sovereignty Council, TSC, which is going to be the federal government that is going to run Sudan. So basically, TSC is a multi-partisan body that is a coalition of both civil political groups and the military junta, that is group of military leaders. And the chairman of this multi-partisan body, TSC, was General Abdel Fattah Burhan. Basically, he created this constitutional body so that when he again becomes the head of the country by appointing himself as the chairman of TSC, at that time he should look a little democratic. General Burhan then made Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo the vice chairman of TSC. So the whole purpose behind the creation of the Transitional Sovereignty Council, TSC, is to make the political scenario in Sudan look a little democratic. And then there is also another angle of looking at it. You can think of it this way. The Transitional Sovereignty Council, TSC, was formed as a part of a political agreement between the military and the opposition forces, who no more wanted to see Omar al-Bashir as president. So these are the two reasons why the TSC was formed. And immediately after its creation, General Burhan, the chairman of TSC, met United States Secretary Mike Pompeo in Khartoum. Then in December 2019, General Burhan was invited to the United States by President Trump.
Again, pay attention. That's the current, that's the man who is in charge of the military. Okay? The man who is in charge of the military fighting his other general. And the other general is in charge of sovereign, how they call it, regime, to have sovereign regime, to have the nation turn over to sovereign, to have election. Okay? So that the people can decide and say, look, listen, this is what we want. Let it be democratic. So now, listen to this. Does the United States support democracy? And that's the question now. I mean, we already know America does not support democracy. America supports her interests. When her interest is being fulfilled in our country, that country is regarded as democracy. That's part of suffering and the humiliation of the people. That country is democracy. So you see what is going on here, right? This man, all right? But in not to it, we're going to go to an article. You're going to see the whole secret of the reason, the purpose behind his visit here. You're going to see it. All right? You're going to see it clear.
The United States has invited the head of Sudan's Sovereign Council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, to Washington as the two countries forge stronger bilateral ties following decades of hostility. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who invited Burhan for the visit.
Then in 2020, General Burhan met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Uganda. He even maintained a close relationship with Egypt and used to make several trips to rich Gulf countries. Because if you see, Sudan is heavily dependent on exports coming from the Gulf countries like Saudi and UAE. So all these international wining and dining went on till October 2021, when General Burhan and his deputy Dagalo both orchestrated a coup against all the civilian political groups that were part of the TSC. If you remember, I told you that the Transitional Sovereignty Council, TSC, is a multi-partisan body that is a coalition of both civil political groups and military junta. So in October 2021, the military officers who were part of the TSC, they decided to remove the civilian politicians. Now the question is, what happened in these 2 years, that is in 2020 and 2021, that made General Burhan and his deputy Dagalo dissolve the TSC by orchestrating a military coup? It is popularly known as 2021 Sudan coup d'etat. Now the question is, why did they do it? You have to understand that there was an agreement between the civilian political groups and the military junta before forming the Transitional Sovereignty Council, TSC. According to that agreement, the Transitional Sovereignty Council would last for only 3 years and 3 months, that is 39 months. You just look at the name Transitional Sovereignty Council. The word transition means at some point it has to finish, it has to dissolve. So it was to be ended after 39 months. In these 39 months, the military junta will rule for 21 months, and then the civilian political leaders will rule for 18 months. That means the 21 months of military rule were going to end on November 2021. And a month before, that is on 20.
Now, again, as we continue, right, I will keep highlighting some point, and then when we get to the article, then you will see what unfolded when Fattah visited the United States. All right. So now, in between here, right, there's 21 months that they said the military junta should rule, and after the 21 months, they should go for election so that it can be turned over to civilian government, right? Now, they agree. That's why sometimes in some agreement, right, it's not going to happen. And this South Sudan was one of the case. Now, within this 21 months, when Fattah visited the United States, this whole 21 months was a fiasco. And up to now, because there were a lot of things that went on behind the scene when Fattah visited the United States. That is why most of the time, some of our African leaders, when they visit the United States, their leadership in our country become a fiasco. Most of the time, some of our African leaders, when they visit the United States, it becomes problem because it's not for nothing. So that visit that he did is what led to the incident we see in Sudan today. The narrator said the purpose of the video is to connect past and present, right? Let's continue. Pay attention.
25th October 2021, General Burhan, along with the Sudanese military, hijacked the government in a military coup. They detained several civilian government officers, ministers, members of political parties, lawyers, civil society activists, and journalists. Many of them were even put on house arrest. So the October 2021 Sudan coup d'etat was organized because the military did not want to hand over the government control.
All right, and since that time, have you heard the United States government accusing the military government? No, because the military government has visited the United States, and the United States have created a deal with them, right? So the 21-day agreement that was passed was already coming to an end, or was already to an end. So then what they did? This joint government, ruling government, then went to the civilian government out head, right? What they did to him? They fought him so that there'll be no election. But the United States did not talk about human rights, though. The United States did not talk about human rights, right? Yes, Dennis, it was Fatah. Yeah, this guy right here, he's called Fatah. He was the one, he's the one leading the military. He was the one that visited the United States. He was the one the United States signed deal with. And when he went back, after the 21-month agreement that was signed, that the country should be turned over to civilian government, what then happened? They see men supported by the United States went against a civilian government that should have been established. Why didn't the United States government talk about democracy? Well, let's continue.
Control to the civilian political parties. Now, the next important question is, after the 2021 coup, both Burhan and Dagalo ruled Sudan. So what happened then? Why are they fighting now? Why are they so brutally against each other? Now, I will explain what went wrong. After the 2021 coup, General Burhan initiated a process of reinstating individuals who were previously associated with Omar al-Bashir's regime that included Islamists to their former positions. This is when Dagalo started having doubts. See, you have to
see what's going on now, right? Again, from the initial stage, the nation had three separate groups of people: the Muslim, the Christian, the traditionalist. All right? Now, the traditionalist, the least among the people, right? The least. So the Christian and the Muslim. Now, Dagalo on the Christian side, right? Who wants civilian government? Now, so what happened now? There's Dagalo now. Currently, he's on the side of the civilian government now because he started having doubt when this guy, okay, Fatah, then went and start recruiting people from what? Omar al-Bashir, right? The same man, these two generals, along with the support of the United States, overthrow Fatah right here, right? I mean, not Fatah, but overthrow Omar, right? But then, how come Fatah left Dagalo out without consultation, but rather going right back, recruiting people from Omar al-Bashir government or regime that they have overthrown, and then bringing them back in here into his government? So you see what is going on here. Let's continue.
understand this. If someone helps you in overthrowing another individual or group, then that person will always have this doubt that even you may double cross or betray him in the future. And as I said, Omar al-Bashir and his people used to somewhat trust Dagalo and the RSF as a counterweight to the regular armed forces. And now after the 2021 coup, General Burhan started reinstating individuals who were previously associated with Omar al-Bashir's regime. This is where Dagalo felt that Omar al-Bashir's people will never fully trust him. And that is true, because the first time, that is in 2019, Dagalo betrayed them. Another thing that you need to understand is that if you look at the Sudanese politics, it has always been dominated by an elite group of people who largely came from ethnic groups that are based around the region of Khartoum and the River Nile. If you look at Dagalo, he comes from Darfur in the west, which is a rural area. The Sudanese political elite often talked about him and his soldiers, that is RSF, in derogatory terms. They used to call them country bumpkins, unfit to rule the state. After that, over the last 2 years, that is since the 2021 coup, Dagalo has been trying to position himself as a national figure. Basically, he started acting like a real politician. He started calling himself as a representative of the marginalized section of society. He even started forming alliances with rebel groups in the Darfur region and South Kordofan because he knew these regions thoroughly. In 2003, he conducted many counterinsurgency operations against Darfuri rebels. So he had a good grip on this region. Even General Burhan was aware of all these things. And I'm sure there are many in his close circles who were giving inputs on Dagalo. And the same was happening with Dagalo. Even Dagalo was getting inputs about Burhan. This is how the fighting began. RSF against the SAF. Dagalo against General Burhan. The two generals are now battling for supremacy and tearing Sudan apart. Over the last few years, Dagalo has built a vast business empire, including interest in gold mines and many other sectors including investment, mining, transport, car rental, iron and steel. So even he has resources as well as power. The situation has become tensed as both the civilian political leaders and General Burhan, who represents the Sudan Armed Forces, are considering a proposal to place the paramilitary rapid support force, that is RSF, under the control of the Sudanese army. RSF has around 100,000 members. On the other hand, naturally, Dagalo, who is the leader of RSF, is not at all in favor of this. In fact, now we are also getting to hear that General Burhan has ordered to disband and dissolve the RSF and declare it as a rebel group. Naturally, Dagalo is not going to get scared or back off. So this has actually become the main source of recent tension. On 15th April, Saturday morning, it is said that the RSF fired some shots in public. This quickly escalated in different parts of the country. It is not exactly clear where the RSF bases are, but it seems that their fighters have moved into densely populated areas. The Sudanese Air Force has mounted airstrikes in the capital city against RSF members, which is also likely to have led to civilian casualties. Now, the important question that must be going on in your head is, what do the two sides want? I'll explain it in simple manner. General Dagalo is presenting himself and the RSF as being on the side of the people. He is telling to the people of Sudan that he is with them, and together they all are going to go against the Khartoum political elites that I've told you about, while he's getting some support from Darfur region and South Kordofan. But there are many people who don't believe him, because he and his RSF has conducted many counter operations against innocent people. Now, if you look at General Burhan, who is from the Sudanese Armed Forces, he's saying that the army will only fully hand over power to an elected government. And he also expects that the civilian politicians will have to share power with the military. Basically, General Burhan wants this situation to be how it was before 2021. Again, there are many who don't believe General Burhan as well. So these are the claims from both sides. Now, the next important question is what other countries are doing. As I said in the beginning, if you remember, there is a broader global power struggle behind this chaos in Sudan. The UK, US and European Union have called for a ceasefire and talks to resolve the crisis. But then if you see, Western nations have very little leverage right now because Sudan has been largely isolated since the 2021 coup. The United States is right now looking at the full range of options. The only thing that they can do is put sanctions against members of SAF and RSF. But that is not going to help. And I don't think the United States is going to put troops in Sudan. Plus, the US doesn't have the appetite to enter into another conflict. Meanwhile, some of the Western media outlets have suggested that the Russian mercenary group called the Wagner Group is operating in Sudan, and Russia is indirectly supporting General Dagalo. Now, these Western media articles also say that the Russian mercenary group is getting gold in return for helping General Dagalo and the RSF. I don't know how far these articles are true. After the Russia-Ukraine conflict, these Western media articles have permanently taken a stand against Russia. So they will write everything against Russia. But one thing that I want to point out is that Russia wants to establish a naval base in the Red Sea on the Sudanese coastline so that Russia gets access to the Indian Ocean. And it was General Dagalo who went to Moscow and agreed to his plan. So if you see, Russia does have an interest in Sudan. Now, regional heavyweights like Saudi Arabia and UAE, even they have close ties with General Dagalo and the RSF. If you remember, RSF has sent thousands of fighters to support the Saudi war in Yemen. I don't know whether Saudi Arabia wants to get involved in Sudan because right now it is busy forming new relations with Iran. Anyhow, it is important to note that many African countries possess abundant natural resources such as oil, gas and minerals. The methods employed by global powers such as Western nations, as well as those in the East like Russia and China, to get involved in these countries are quite different. Western countries often use justifications such as promoting democracy, human rights, women's rights, etc. Whereas Russia and China tend to intervene through infrastructure investment. As I said in the beginning of this video, the United States was involved in creating a comprehensive peace agreement between Sudan and South Sudan, which led to South Sudan's independence. So any kind of mediation from the Western countries in Sudan will come only through United Nations and African Union. The United States will not get directly involved, but Western powers fear Russia could establish a military base on the Red Sea.
All right. So you are seeing the video, right? We're going to go straight into the article. I got two articles. Yes, I got two articles, but because of time, right? I'm going to bring out one. We're going to do one because of time. We are running out of time, so I can't use the two articles, but I'm going to use one. But you are seeing the video. Now you understand for some reason, you understand what is going on in Sudan right now, right? Okay? You understand what is going on in Sudan. So as we have seen, we already know that the military government is being supported by the UK and the United States. All right? And Dagalo, okay, who is currently on the side of the Soviet government, right, is being supported by other outside influence too. Okay? So the United States playing a huge part, I don't want to say huge part, but the United States playing a part for South Sudan to be independent in 2011, to make South Sudan as a territory or a colony, right? Do you think the United States is going to sit down for Russia to come in? So pay key attention. What is going on right now? And South Sudan have a major, how they call it, sea route, to use the sea to travel in our region. All right? So the United States is not going to allow Russia to have a base there, or Russia, how they call it, or to have any influence over Sudan. Because the sea route is a major, how they call it, a traveling route, okay, for their ship, their canoe, their boat, in case of any war or any chaos, in which, of course, we cannot rule it out. The fact that there's a war in Ukraine, right? These imperialists, they don't care. As long as the war is not in their country, they don't care. Imperialists does not care whether Ukrainians die or not. The war is not in their country. So they won't care if there's a war in Africa and African peoples are dying. They don't. By the way, let me just remind you, you know the UN Secretary General, right? Anthony Guterres, you know what he said? There should be a ceasefire for 3 days in Sudan so that America can get her citizens out. So that the Western people can get their citizens out. And then after that, Sudanese can stay there and kill one another. Why would there be ceasefire for 3 days to get people out? And then after that, so that means they don't care about the war. All they want is, they don't care about ceasefire. All they want is for the war to continue. Because they were not allowed the Sudanese to have their own will to bring people in. Let's get to the article and see what's going on here. Let's get to the article. I got two articles, but I can't, because of time, I will just bring one, and I have to leave the other one out because we're running out of time. All right, but you already know what's going on. So it says, this article says, U.S. role exposed masses racist Sudan group. All right, so let's see here. Okay, now I'm going to read this article to the end. All right, I'm going to read it to the end so that you can see. Hold on, let me put light on. I need light. I need light. Let me put a light on. All right, I'm going to read this article to the end, to the very end, so that you can see what in the video, so that you can see what you saw in the video. You're going to see it in an article. The reason why Fatah was invited to the United States and who controls Sudan and why the war in Sudan. The video you watch, this is just an addition to what you're going to see here. Let's continue. Now, the October 25th military group in Sudan, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has been met by a heroic outpouring of coordinated people resisting. Let's continue. Now, the U.S. imperialism is intensively involved behind the scenes in an effort to sabotage the revolutionary struggle arising in this strategic African country. The U.S. can draw on its vast financial leverage, global military reach, intelligence agency, capitalist media, and a web of non-governmental organization, NGO, and other well-funded organizations. Sudan is a country rich in oil, natural gas. Now, of course, pay attention now, all right? Sudan is a country rich in oil, natural gas, gold, and other resources. It is also located on the Red Sea. Pay attention now. On the Red Sea, on global shipping lines. Historically, it has been targeted by various destabilizing strategies, including attempts to break the unified country into smaller competing regions, divide and conquer. Pay attention. Coup leader Burhan has declared himself head of the Sovereign Council, a power-sharing body of military officers and civilians, which has been ruling Sudan since late 2019. Prime Minister Abdel Ahmadok, head of the moderate civilian function of that transitional government, has been arrested. So you saw it in the video, right? Where he was arrested by Fatah after he visited the United States and after the 21 peace agreement that was signed was over, right? Which, of course, they should have election to turn the country over to a civilian government, right? Now, listen to this, right? So he was arrested, right? Along with most civilian cabinet member and other leaders. The United States did not report on this. The United States did not say, hey, no, this guy should be charged. He should go to the Hague. He should go to the ICC. That corrupt organization, that buyer organization. But now no African government should be part of that ICC. That ICC is a colonial organization intended only for weaker nations. Meanwhile, the United States is not part of that ICC. How can a country that is not part of the ICC indict countries that are part of the ICC? How can a country that is not part of the ICC supersede or oversight ICC issue? You are not part of that entity. But you are the one telling people to go to that RCC to judge them. You are the one judging people in that RCC. African people, are we stupid or crazy? Let's continue here. Let's continue here. So, in 2019, right? So, the Prime Minister, Abdul Ahmad, head of the moderate surveillance function of that transitional government, has been arrested, along with most surveillance cabinet member and other leaders. So now, widespread resistance to coup. Let's continue to this. We're going to get to where he came to the United States and what they told him, what they gave him, and every bad agreement the United States did to sabotage the election, to sabotage Sudan from becoming a free state. Let's continue here. The Sudanese Communist Party and its ally trade union, neighborhood resistance committees, and the Sudanese Professional Association, SPA, is an organization of teachers, medical workers, and civil service workers have issued a call to take on the street. All right? Now, these are the surveillance people. These are the people who support the surveillance government, right? Let's continue here. The basic unifying demand is for the return of surveillance government. The tactics are civil disobedience, a general strike, and other coordinated mass action. All schools, industries, including the national airline and civil services, are part of the strike call. A country like the United States who believe in democracy, all right? Why didn't they listen to the people? But rather, they took the military government side. I thought they believe in the voice of the people. Fake people who believe in fake democracy. Let's continue here. In an effort to break this coordination, the military has shut all internet communication. The military supported by the United States government, they went ahead and shut all internet communication so that these people were being unable to mobilize. Just how when you come out with educated information on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, they ban it, they take it down, they delete it, and then they say it is not in guideline of their policy. So that's how the military supported by the United States went ahead and close all social media platforms so that these people cannot communicate, so that their messages cannot get across. Let's continue. A nation that believes in democracy. Let's continue here. Sudan in 2018, uprising. Let's continue here. The military coup and mass popular resistance is the most recent phase in an unfolding revolutionary process in Sudan, which began with a December 2018 popular uprising. This upheaval protested economic shortages, spiraling food prices, and hyperinflation created by years of sanction and competing separatist movement. The United States put sanction on Sudan. Do you know when was that? The government of the United States helped Fatah and Dongado, helped those two generals to go and overthrow, to go and overthrow a government. Omar, they overthrew Omar al-Bashir, right? So when he was in power, the United States put sanction on our government because either you know what the United States do. That government did not support their foreign policy. But let's continue here. Okay? Let's continue here. The 2018 uprising involved mission of Sudanese workers, peasant farmers, and herded youth and oppressed nationality. The mobilization also pulled in U.S. funded organization, middle-class business, council, and moderate political parties. Let's continue here. The upheaval led to a group within the military aligned with the movement and arresting President Ahmad al-Bashir. All right? The government of the United States sanctioned. Okay? The government of the United States sanctioned because Ahmad al-Bashir was not in compliance or could not have been in compliance. Let me use that word. Could not have been in compliance with American foreign policy, with American selfish interests. And just because I am not in compliance of your foreign policy, that does not mean I hate you. It just means your foreign policy will be a threat to our national interest. And if your foreign policy could be or will be a threat to our national interest, there is no need to support your foreign policy. In our case, that does not mean we hate you or we don't like you or we don't like your interests. The country interests come first before American interests. Let's get that clear. Now, so that's how, right? So a general who had held power since 1989, though millions of people were swept into motion in the revolutionary upheaval, the development were cut short by a 2019 agreement between more moderate business forces, political parties, and the Sudanese military to form the Sudanese Sovereign Council. Right? So let's go down here. Let's just go down here. Let's go down here because we're running out of time. So decade of U.S. interference. So let's start from here now, right? Decades of U.S. interference. Now, the U.S. has forced on destabilizing and dividing Sudan, as we have today, Sudan and South Sudan, right? It was the U.S., it was the United States involvement. Now, the U.S. has forced on destabilizing and dividing Sudan with more than 30 years of U.S. sanctions that have strangled the country. In 1998, a U.S. missile attack destroyed Sudan only pharmaceutical plant. So the United States went and destroyed the nation only pharmaceutical plant where the nation at that time were producing or doing research for medical purposes, producing their own medication. So the United States went specifically with their missile and destroyed that plant so that we can rely, so that African people can rely on American supply, on American drugs. Was this not violation of human rights? The United States will be taken to the court, to the so-called International Criminal Court. But because of these things that the United States do, they say, no, we don't want to be part of that court. They are not part. So they went and bombed the country on a pharmaceutical plant. And there have been years of Israel's bombing or bombardment of Sudan with U.S. backing. Where is the human right? U.S. effort to petition the country include backing various separatist breakaway attempts, like in Darfur, like what we saw in the video, Darfur in West Sudan. Not to mention the U.S. role in the peace agreement of 2005 between Sudan and South Sudan. An immediate recognition of South Sudan in 2011. So now you see who controls South Sudan. You see, while the war is in South Sudan, but listen, we have not even come to while the war is in South Sudan, right? We will come there. We will come there. We're running out of time. I don't know if I should just get there one time. But I don't want to leave things out. Okay, so let's continue here. The unstable coalition government in 2019, made up of competing economic forces, attempted to negotiate a deal with Washington to lift the sanctions. So now this is where the problem is coming from. This is how, I mean, most of you know about the economic hitman. What the United States did right here to Sudan, to South Sudan, was what economic hitmen been doing or have been doing to the African continent. So this is what exactly the United States, Washington, D.C. did to South Sudan. They bought South Sudan. The unable correlation between the unable correlation in government. That means the division in government, right? The division in government, the conflict in government in 2019, made up of competing economic forces, attempted to negotiate a deal with Washington, D.C. to lift the sanction and provide some economic relief to the population. So, if a nation in Africa does not agree to the United States, how they call it, foreign policy, they put sanction on you. So why do you think countries are leaving the United States or the UK and going to China or Russia? Why? Because the United States friendship, the United States partnership, right, is to dominate. It's not based on equal. It's not based on upliftment. It's not based on empowering, but it's oppressive. If you say no, they come against you in various form. But let's continue. Unable to resist demand from the Trump and Biden administration, from the Trump. Okay, let me make this clear. At that time, Biden was not in power, right? But the United States government, whether conservative or whether liberal, they all go with the same agenda like Malcolm X told us. So Biden came and continued with Trump where Trump stopped. So that is what they said with Trump and Biden administration. So unable to resist Trump, unable to resist demand from Trump and Biden administration, the Sovereign Council, which is led by Fatah, the Sovereign Council signed agreement over the past 2 years with dangerous internal and international implication. What is that international or internal implication or international implication? Fatah do not invite China nor Russia in South Sudan. If that happens, there will be chaos, there will be war, what we see there today. That's the implication. The implication is you are a colony. You are indebted to us. You are a territory to us. You have no right. We have seized your right. You are slave to us. So if China come in or Russia come in, there will be some implication. And that implication is what we are seeing. Let's continue here. The Sudanese government under the council agreed to recognize the state of Israel. When he came to the United States, these are the agreement. These are the agreement when he came to the United States. So don't get it twisted. The war you see in Sudan. Don't get it twisted. The moment the presence of Russia and China went in, they have to create war. Listen to this. Part of that agreement when Fatah came to the United States, part of that agreement was the Sudanese government under the council agreed to recognize the state of Israel, a huge concession, considering Sudan decade of defense of Palestine and the fact that Israel had reportedly bombed targeted or had reportedly bombed target in Sudan for years. So part of this was Sudan should not condemn Israel from bombing Palestine. Sudan should leave the support of Palestine. Sudan should not support Palestine, but rather should support Israel. Let's continue here. In order to uplift the sanction designation that Sudan was a state sponsor of terrorism. So listen to this now again. So does that mean the United States support terrorist activities on the African continent? Because listen to this right here. In order to lift the U.S. designation that Sudan was a state of sponsored terrorism in 2019, Prime Minister Hamdok, prior to his visit to Washington, signed a law to dismantle and confiscate organizations or businesses that supported Palestine charity. So part of that agreement, right, to lift the sanction, right, you have to destroy every document. You have to destroy every document in Sudan that Sudan had against Israel of destroying Palestine. Part of that agreement, America told the people to destroy it. Yes, that a democratic nation that believe in democracy, that believe in the rule of law, right? But again, there's one thing I want to discuss here. They told Sudan, in order to lift the sanction, right, or in order to make you a state-free terrorist, you have to agree to these things. So does that mean if Sudan was not going to agree, Sudan was going to still remain a terrorist? So if Sudan agreed that, okay, I want to be a free state terrorist, then that means the United States will not tell. That could be possible that the United States will not tell people who in our region acting as terrorists to tell them to back off Sudan. So does that mean they support terrorist activities? Because if they agree, if they say Sudan is now free from terrorism, then that means those in our region that act as terrorists will listen to America. So does that mean it could be that America is the one supporting terrorist activities on the African continent? Because how can the United States say Sudan is a terrorist nation? It's dangerous. And then the United States tells Sudan, if we agree to what we are saying here, what we are telling you, then we will make you a terrorist-free state. So that means it could be possible. It is possible the United States support terrorist activities on the African continent. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. All right. Now, they say part of that agreement, right? Sudan should also assess of Hamas connected to business people in besieged Gaza were seized. So Hezbollah supporters were expelled. Okay, Hezbollah supporters were expelled. Palestinian students from Gaza could no longer gain university education in Sudan. That was part of the agreement the United States gave to Sudan. Palestinian residents in Sudan, Palestinian students in Sudan should no longer gain access to Sudanese education to be educated. So do you see what of in our agreement? But let's continue. We will get to the war issue, why the war in Sudan right now. We will get there. But these are all part of the agreement that today leading to the war. For decades, people and resistance organizations from countries under U.S. control throughout the Arab war have sought refuge in Sudan. Suddenly, they were at risk. That a nation that believes in human rights, putting people at risk. The transitional government signed an agreement. This is where now we're going. This is where the United States strongest Sudan. And today, the war in Sudan. The transitional government strangle an arrangement to pay 335 million United States dollars to U.S. family who were victims of terrorist attack. Oh, hold a minute. But I thought, how would the United States hold Sudan responsible for terrorist attack? When the United States, it seems that the United States could be the one supporting terrorist activities, because the United States told Sudan that if you agree with this demand that we are giving you, then we will make Sudan a terrorist-free nation. But if you don't agree, then Sudan will remain a terrorist nation. So then, who are supporting the terrorist activity in Sudan? But you see what they do here, right? What they did to Haiti, that is what they did to Sudan, or South Sudan. So, the United States government, after this Fatah came to Washington, D.C., this is what they told here again. The traditional government signed an agreement to pay 335 million United States dollars to U.S. family who were victims of terrorist attack in several African countries, not even in Sudan, but in several African countries. So, terrorist attack that happened, for example, maybe in Mali, or for example, maybe in Chad, for example, maybe in Burkina Faso, the United States government charged Sudan for it and said all the terrorist activity that have been happening around those places that have affected American, only American, not African. So America is not fighting for Africa though, not African, only American. So the United States government told Sudan, you have to pay 335 million to American family who were victims of terrorist attack in several African countries. Did you see that? Did you see that nonsense? But listen to this. Who's going to get that $335 million? The same United States will give $335 million to the Sudanese government to give it to the American. Then the $335 million will come back to America. Now, Sudan is already in debt, right? Sudan is already in debt. Now, Sudan is in debt. Sudan can't do nothing. Now, Sudan have to give her rights. Sudan have to give her God-given right, her land to America. Listen to this. Listen to what's going on here, right? Listen to this. Now, this attack. So first of all, if Sudan is paying $335 million only to American family, how about the Sudanese that got affected by the same terrorists? How about Africans in those African countries where American family were got affected? How about Africa in those African nations? Where are their own share? Where are the so-called American human rights fighting for African too? If you are fighting for American in those regions, there were African in those regions who are not Sudanese. But they were African. There were Sudanese there too. So you're not fighting for Africans. You're not fighting for Sudanese. But the 35 million, the United States will give it to Sudan, and then Sudan will give that 35 million back. Economic hitman. But let's continue here. This attack had not taken place in Sudan. A future $700 million loan to the battle of Sudan's economy was contingent on this payment. Almost half the money dangled as U.S. economic relief had the first be paid to the U.S. So you see it. So the money was given to Sudan. America gave it to Sudan as loan, right? Then Sudan took it and gave it back to America to give it to her citizens. It came back to the American economy. Now Sudan is broke and poor. Now Sudan had to pay this money back with huge loan or huge interest, right? Sudan ain't got the money. Sudan ain't got the economy because first of all, the Sudan economy have been crashed down by American sanction for over 30 years. The economy is not built. First of all, America had gone and bombed the people on a pharmaceutical company. Then why couldn't the Sudanese government charge the United States for bombing her own pharmaceutical company? Why can the United States go and build it back? No. But you see when we talk about power, you see the hypocrisy of the United States. You see the double standard of the United States. So let's continue here. In exchange for this other concession, okay, the U.S. Department of Commerce declared January 19 that Sudan was open for business. In exchange, after Sudan have agreed to turn over Sudan to America, okay, then now, after Sudan have agreed to destroy every evidence of Israel bombing Palestine, after Sudan have agreed that Palestinian students or residents or citizens in Sudan should not have access to university in Sudan. I mean, all these horrible agreements, after Sudan agreed, then America now opened Sudan for business. Then America said Sudan was open and free and safe for business, no more terrorists. But while some sanctions on Sudan were lifted, other sanctions were left in place, subject to meeting further U.S. demand. Further to meeting other U.S. demand. Where is the democracy? An imperialist will always be an imperialist. An oppressor will always be an oppressor. How dare the United States today to come and blame African nation or while they're choosing China over them, while they're choosing Russia over them? They are doing it because your friendship is oppressive. You lie. You deceive people. You exploit people. You dehumanize people. You destabilize people. Instead of stabilizing people, you destabilize them. Instead of uniting people, you divide them and conquer them. Instead of building people, you bully people. Let's continue. The U.S. military recolonizing threat. In March, the coalition government was forced to welcome to Port Sudan the USS Winston Churchill, a guided missile destroyer. U.S. warship have not had access to Sudan for more than 30 years. Now, during our 30 years of Omar al-Bahar, that 30-year sanction, now you understand this was another reason they put sanction on Omar al-Bahar. Now you understand this was another reason the United States government supported General Fatah and General Douglas to go and overthrow Omar. Because this was something, interest that his government did not want for America to have access of the coast. So you see here, over 30 years, America never had access. Her missile never had access. But when her missile have access, what they did? They used a missile to bomb and destroy the people on a pharmaceutical company or a plane. Well, let's continue here. The destroyer is an ongoing threat by the United States. And Winston Churchill is revealed in Sudan as an arrogant, racist colonialist who launched his political career as a cavalry officer in the Sudan during the British colonial army defeat of the AUMD uprising at the Battle of Omdurman on September 2nd, 1898. The Mahdi movement have assembled a unified discipline forces for more than 100,000 Sudanese soldiers and succeeded in halting British domination for almost 2 decades. The anti-colonial movement was formed by religious leader Mohammed Hamid bin Abdul Allah, or Hamdit. The Churchill was correspondent account from the front enthusiastically described the defeat of the Hamdin army, Mahout down by British machine guns and crossfire from British gunboats. The battle at Hamduram, a city located strategically across from Cotonou, where the Blue and White Nile River converge, was a turning point in securing British colonial domination in Africa. Now, in an echo of all colonial rule, the USS, United States based, how they call it, ammunition or whatsoever, right? The USS Winston Churchill guard, that's a glance into a Sudanese harbor and an opening for AFRICOM, the U.S. Africa Command, to partner with Sudan military is on friendly discussion. The U.S. backed capitalist reform. The U.S. has backed the return of the depredation of the International Monetary Fund on Sudan battle economy. The IMF demanded Sudan end fuel and full subsidy to the population in June. How can that be? So do you see that? Economic hitman. Doubling the cost of gasoline and diesel overnight, raising the cost of food and essential supply, and sending inflation soaring. So you see that. The subsidy has ensured basic substances or basic substance, but the weak government. So first of all, when IMF went in, right, in order to make Sudan a weak government, they told Sudan to stop subsidizing food and fuel so that things can become hard. And once they become hard, the country is stuck, people can't do business, people can't do nothing, then they control you. So you see that, right? They control you. So the subsidy can ensure basic substance, but the weak government trying to meet U.S. demand comply with IMF monetary reform. Now, the most desperate part of the population is increasingly dependent on the charity of UN and the U.S. aid organization for handout. You become powerless. Now you have to agree to the imperialists. You become a colonist. You become a slave. You become 3/5 of a lesser human being. You become inferior. Let's continue. Now, what Sudan need and want to buy is equipment and technology for development. That is what Sudan need, right? That is what the Sudanese are advocating for. Development, equipment, and technology to build themselves, not to rely on UN, not to rely on US. Sudan, they are not crippled. Okay, they are not handicapped. All right? They have land. They are not landless. They are not stateless. All they need is equipment. All they need is technology. That's all they need. They don't need food being imported. So now you understand. That is why they do not encourage agriculture on the African continent. So here is the United States along with IMF telling Sudan not to subsidize farming, but rather they should depend on UN aid. They should depend on US aid. Now you understand why agriculture are not being promoted on the African continent. Any African leader you want to do where they come against you and they slaughter you. They slaughter you. They can go and advocate for gay rights. Things that is not even a right. We have so many rights that have been violated by America. But they will go and advocate for things that are not right, that are not human rights. They will go and put money into things that we don't need. But they are on the African continent spending $60 million for stupidity, for another man to go put his nut into another man's butthole. That alone in itself is disgrace to our women. You are disgracing our African queen. You are disgracing our African women. By telling us we shouldn't follow women. We should leave our African women and go and follow another man. In America, you follow men. In Africa, we don't follow men. We follow women. We cherish women. In America, you cherish women. In Africa, in America, you cherish men. In Africa, we cherish women. In America, you love women. In America, you love men. In Africa, we love women. In America, you get roses to men. In Africa, we get roses to women. For this, they need access. So this is what the Sudanese are asking for, and America is not giving it. What Sudan need and want to buy is equipment and technology for development. For this, they need access to banking and financial credit, which the IMF had destroyed, which the United States, the UN, the IMF does not want. But Sudanese want it. So far, international assistance with development has only come from China. International assistance and development have only come from China. These are the Sudanese speaking. International assistance and development have only come from China. So why do you think African nations prefer other nations over the US and UK? Other nations, China is now in Africa destroying African pharmaceutical plant. But you, America, you are in Africa destroying African pharmaceutical plant. Yeah, you did it to Libya as well. Russia is now in Africa destroying African pharmaceutical plant. Russia is now in Africa putting sanctions on African people. Russia is now in Africa telling IMF or telling African nations to not invest in agriculture. Russia is now in Africa telling African people, don't do nothing. We will give you aid. China is now in Africa telling African, China is there to teach Africans how to fetch. China is not fishing for us or farming for us. China is telling Africans, we are here to teach you how to farm. We are here for mutual benefit. If you disagree with my policy, I will go or come by and renegotiate. China is not overthrowing African leaders. China is not planning coup in Africa like you, the United States, been doing coup in Africa around the African continent and taking down African leaders. Let's continue here. Mass demonstration. Mass demonstration met the transitional government decision to end food and fuel subsidies. So you see it. After IMF, along with the United States, told Sudan, no, you got to end, how they call it, food subsidy. Don't have farmers. Don't give money to Sudanese to go farm. No, don't do it. We will bring them food. So when they did that, the Sudanese came out with resistance. Sudan had already, at IMF demand, devalue its currency. China and Russia, they are not in Africa telling African nation, or they are not there to devalue African currency. I believe if African leader even want for Russia to buy their mineral resources in the African currency, Russia will buy it. Because all Russia needs, she needs her resources. I believe if African nation, even tell China, buy our resources in our currency, China will buy it in the African currency because China wants the resources. But now the US, they go there and devalue African currency so that their currency can be used to buy our own resources again. Because if their currency are being used, that means they will value their currency over our resources. That means they will buy our resources little or nothing, or even corrupt as they've been doing it. So Sudan have already, at IMF demand, devalued its currency in February. The end of subsidy was another devastating blow to all workers. Is that freedom? Is that upliftment? Let's continue here. In June, the demonstrations were organized by the SPA. Now, you remember the SPA and the SCP, as mentioned in the video. Those are the people, civilian, right, that are coming together, advocating for what? Civilian government, for election. I thought the United States, as a democratic or peacemaker, supposed to be on this side, on the side of these people. But why are they on the side of the military? Foreign policy. In June, the demonstration were organized by the SPA and the SCP. These are the forces opposing the military coup now. These are the forces opposing the military coup now. U.S. machination to disrupt Sudan are part of a plan to dominate Africa, extending far beyond Sudan. The U.S. worked to undermine the security and the stability of every country it targets, regardless of size. Division and weakening of independence is imperialism goal in the service of relentless concentration of capital and corporate domination. To strengthen resistance to this brutal exploitation, the general strike and heroic resistance in Sudan need the full solidarity of all working people, especially here in the U.S. We got to work together. The power of working class organization to unify and organize millions of workers, peasant or oppressed nationalities to defend their own interests against those exploitative deal and military coup is the way forward. So you see, now you understand the war in Sudan is not by coincidence. It's not just because Sudanese wake up, they want to kill one another. It's not just because African people love war. They ain't like peace. So you see what's going on in Sudan, and you see who are the hands behind it and the reason why they are behind it. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have gone beyond our limit. We've been here since 10 a.m. to 1:15 a.m. I can see people have come, people have gone. But again, sometimes the topic is so intensive, you want to cover it because we may not come back again. So sometimes I just take the time to just carry on and so. But I thank all you all for sticking in, to be with us and things. And even those of you that have left, I know you will come back, to watch the recording. I know some of you, got to go do your thing. It is what it is. But once again, this is what I have for you today, and this is what's going on in Sudan. Okay, this is what's going on today in Sudan. Is the scramble for Africa that is continuing. Okay, because another party have gone in to bring in the presence of China, to bring in the presence of Russia. Because what is going on right now in Africa is nations are trying to find means. Okay, let me take this off. Nations are trying to find means to see what's the best option. And nations are saying the United States is not the best option. Okay, that is what's happening. Nations are saying the United States is not the best option. Europe is not the best option, or UK is not the best option. All these colonizers, they are not the best option. All these imperialists, they are not the best option. That is not to say Russia is the best option. That is not to say Russia is or China is the best. But what African nations are saying here is we still need people that will help us to uplift us, to empower us, because we still need their technology. And in needing people of the technology, who are the best option? That is what Africans are saying. And Africans are saying United States or Europe, they are not the best. Because United States have been in Africa for so long, and United States have had the opportunity to enjoy technology for so long and build her economy. But rather, instead of her helping Africa to be the best option, but it is the same United States undermining African leaders and supporting coup and terrorists and proxy wars. So that is why nations are saying you are not the best. Nations are saying you are not the best because when each time you go with a foreign policy, your selfish interest, when they say no, your interest will be problem to our interest. It will not bear us. You put sanction on them. How are you going to put sanction on a nation for 30 years? And then you want them to take you to be best partner. And then within that 30 years, you stronger them. How are you going to be the best option when you do not sit on a table to negotiate with nations? If nation says no to you, you come out with sanction, with all kind of a constraint. You tell nation what to do. You don't ask nation. You don't tell nation what you think, but you tell them what to do. So they don't take it as best option. That is not hate. It's the reality. Sometimes your time got to be over. You can't keep surprising the same people over and over, and you think the same people will not rise. So that is what happened in Sudan. It is not a coincidence. It is international conflict. It is international war. Thank you, and I will see you all next week. Peace.